First, most important thing in your research is there should be sufficient amount of literature survey. You should search at least 200 to 300 total research paper, thesis, white report, technical reports. Then comes lack of testable question. So if you define the question which cannot be testable, okay, like we give some example. What was the example? Can anyone remind? Can tell me what was the example I give? Lack of testable research. Like we gave one
What
example.
happens after death?
Yes.
What happens after death?
What happens after death? This is a very non-testable research question. Okay, you cannot test that really. Okay, unless the person doing research can go and come back. Okay, he can go but cannot come back. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
yeah. Then over ambitious
Um,
measurement plan. We also got one example related to this. Like if you want to measure the g, that is acceleration due to gravity, we know that it is different at different places. If you want to measure this on the earth, you have to go at many locations, many countries, and it will be over ambitious in cost wise, time wise. Who will fund this research because it will need very huge money. Then comes inadequate sample size. Now we have to take sample size sufficiently big so that whatever we are telling, we can trust. Okay, we just take one example and say this is happening to one person or to one particular reading, and that is correct. That cannot be the case. We have to take sufficient big size of sample. Okay, not only one, two. Okay, like suppose you want to prove some medicine, like they have their own standard for testing the medicine, but you have to be sufficient people, you have to take the tests. Like person from the medicine can tell. I think there is one person from medicine, I think, no? Pharmacy. So we have to take the test on sufficient number of people. Like during the COVID, it was also required to test the vaccine on the sufficient number of persons. Okay. The same thing, we have to take the sufficient number of readings. Suppose I give the example, one parameter in my study, I have to, in practical case, this parameter varies from 10,000 to 1 lakh in practical case. Okay. So if I take one reading of 10,000 and one reading of 1 lakh, it is not enough. So I need to vary at least 1,000, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 60,000, 70,000, 80,000, and 1 lakh, 90,000 and 1 lakh. I'll say it is enough number of readings. But if I take only 10,000 and 1 lakh, that will be inadequate sample size. So whatever I conclude only on 2 readings cannot accept it easily. Okay. Then comes unethical methods. So when we conduct the research which is related to medical or even other research, we have to follow certain ethics. We have to follow the certain ethics. Okay. Like if I conduct some research and I take questionnaires from the participant, so as an ethical way, I should not disclose the identity of person. That is the ethical way. Okay. There are different ways, like testing the medicines. We have to follow the certain ethical issues. Okay. So your research problem should not violate the ethical issues related to that. Like if you see different countries have different restrictions, okay? Like in the Muslim, they don't eat the pig, and if your research in the Saudi Arabia is related to the pig, then that is not ethical in their country. Okay, please understand. The ethical practice may change from country to country, but your research should not be going unethical way. Then there should not be any bias during the sample collection, or in the research problem, it should not be biased to prove something or disprove something. Please understand. You should not be biased in your research to prove something or to disprove something. Okay, we have to collect in the data in the neutral way. Same way, while conclusion, there should not be any bias. Please understand, if there is bias in the research, you have to tell the conclusion or any research or research problem, it should be also not biased. Okay, it should not be biased to conclude something. It should not be biased to direct it during the collection of data. Okay. Now we'll come to the scope of research problem. Okay. Scope of a research problem. Scope of research problem. Now, scope, please understand what is the scope. Scope defines boundary of something. It defines the boundary. Okay, so we have to define the limit for your study. Like recent example we saw acceleration due to gravity. I can limit my study. I will say variation of acceleration due to gravity in the territory of Maharashtra, in territory of India. Okay, that is the scope. Now we have to limit the study. We have to limit in the time. We have to limit in the money. Okay, the three scope we have to apply. Now here, limit of the study. Like I given one example, study of pressure drop and heat transfer enhancement with heat transfer enhancement with 90-degree ribs in a square duct. Okay. So I put limit here. What limit I has done? So one parameter called as RE, Reynolds number, changing from 10,000 to 1 lakh. So I have limit. I'm not telling from 10 to 1 million. I am telling 10,000 to 1 lakh. Why? Because this is the range existing in the real life, majority of application. Same thing. Next example, study of Alzheimer's disease using the MRI. In this study also, I have limitings in the what age group from 40 to 60. And further limitation is what? From the India. From the India. We can also limit from the Maharashtra like this. Okay. You can also limit from the Maharashtra. So scope means what? We limit, we decide our boundary. Scope means what? We decide the boundary of our study. So you clearly define the boundary. Get it accepted from your research review committee. Like suppose there is one more objective is there, research problem, increasing the mileage of 100cc bike by 8 km per liter. So we have decided target. And then we have given the scope on what Indian highway condition. So we have limited that. You can say India road condition, or we can say Maharashtra road condition, like this. So we have to define the boundaries. Same boundaries we have to define in terms of money and time. You cannot spend the crores of rupees on your PhD research unless it is funded. You will have some limitation. Maybe your research cost 1 lakh, 2 lakh, okay. But it's costing 2 crores, 4 crores, like this. We have to limit your boundary. You have to limit your time. You have to limit your time. Okay. So this was about a research problem. So we saw the scope. We saw the scope of the research. In the scope, what we do, we limit what? We limit boundaries in terms of, we can say research, in terms of money, in terms of time. Like we take the example of AMI research. So AMI research, our time frame is what? Your research should not take more than 6 months. Other time is needed for writing the thesis. We go for PhD. Okay. Your research should not take more than 2 years time frame. Okay, for conducting research, other time remaining time it will take for writing the thesis, writing the paper. So this scope you have to add. You have to write your research problem in a such way that you will able to complete if you are doing full time your research, major work, conducting the experiments, collecting the data, analysis, everything should complete it in 2 years. Remaining thing we can do thesis writing, paper writing in remaining years. Okay. So that is the scope. Scope also we have to define in terms of money. Like it can, if it is costing too huge, you have to limit your research. It's costing 2 crores, 10 crores. So we have to apply for funding. Otherwise, it is not possible. And we know that if you apply for funding, it is not definite that you will get the funds. Okay. So that is the scope we define. We define the boundaries. Okay. From the research problem, we have to form the objectives. What will be your objective for the research? Once the research problem is clear, like my research problem is like I gave the example here. Study the pressure drop of heat transfer enhancement with the 90-degree ribs. Then I have to define my objective. What is the objective? Study the heat transfer enhancement to find the what parameters. Now in the objective to clearly define which parameter you will find out. You will find the Nusselt number, friction factor for the Reynolds number ranging from 1 lakh to then comes the performance. To study the performance and compare with the plain duct. Okay. Okay. So that will be our objective of the research, which is formed from the research problem. Please understand. Okay. Research problem is guiding, and from that we can find the research objectives. Okay. So if you have any question, please ask. So this initial phase of forming the research problem is very important, very critical. Okay. You have to be very serious in doing literature review. So I will also take the next time literature review lecture and give some examples. So these are the few references. Okay. Thank you. If you have any question, you can ask me. I'll stop this recording.